In 2013, they were the mad scientist of the Android world. The only one bold enough to move the power button to the back of the phone, curved the display like a bizarre experiment, and create a shell that could heal its own scratches. It's none other than LG. In the US market, they once ranked in the top 3. At one point, they were the rare creative counterweight that forced Samsung to stay on guard. But why did a company that possessed some of the world's leading display technology, a massive supply chain, and undeniable engineering talent fail in the very game it once helped lead? Don't blame it on a saturated market. This was not a natural death. This was a prolonged suicide. Today, we're not just dissecting a technological corpse. We're going to count how many times LG shot itself in the foot before it finally collapsed. Let's rewind to the mid-2000s. LG was not an outsider. They were part of pop culture. The LG chocolate, with its sleek sliding design, sold 21 million units, a number big enough to turn it into an icon. The LG Voyager and LG NV showed up in the hands of students, office workers, everyday American consumers. At that time, LG understood the domestic market in a very grounded way. They sold devices that were both stylish and practical. When the Android era exploded, LG was not left behind. The LG G2 made waves with its bold design and smooth experience, selling around 3 million units. Then, in 2014, with the LG G3, they launched the first mass-produced QHD display, a move that showcased their technological muscle. The G3 sold 10 million units. In that moment, they stood shoulder to shoulder with the biggest names in the industry. But after the G3, the curve began to break. Not a single LG phone was able to compete successfully at scale anymore. From the budget segment to mid-range and all the way up to high-end, they showed up only to fade into indifference. There was no longer another 10 million unit breakthrough. From being a formidable challenger, LG gradually slipped into a supporting role. LG's problem was not a lack of good products. The problem was that they failed to make people desire those products. In a market where every phone has a beautiful display, a powerful chip, and a camera that is good enough, the difference lies in how you tell the story. LG told its story like a technical press release. They talked about resolution, about processor cores, about AI ThinQ as if the buyer were reading a spec sheet in a lab. The brand confusion became even more obvious when LG phones were absorbed into the image of a home electronics conglomerate. When you hear LG, you think of stunning OLED TVs, durable washing machines, smart refrigerators. Phones were just a small item in that massive product catalog. Their marketing never separated smartphones into a distinct icon. It didn't have the rebellious edge of Samsung, the premium minimalism of Apple, nor the high-value mindset of Chinese brands. It was safe, neutral, and forgettable. The naming strategy only made things more confusing. From G to V to Velvet, each repositioning felt like starting from scratch. There was no strong generational continuity to build loyalty. Consumers couldn't tell which line was the flagship and which was an experiment. When a brand fails to create a clear system, buyers gravitate toward something simpler. But this wasn't because they lacked ideas. On the contrary, they were perhaps one of the most willing companies to experiment in the entire smartphone industry. In 2007, the LG Prada arrived with a capacitive touchscreen, at a time when the world was still fumbling with styluses and physical keyboards. It wasn't the best-selling device in history, but it proved that LG understood the future lay in touching the screen directly, not through an intermediary. In 2010, the LG Optimus 2X brought a dual-core processor and 1080p video recording to consumers earlier than most of the market. While other brands were still talking about performance as a promise, LG turned it into a concrete spec. Around the same time, the Optimus 3D experimented with more than one rear camera, playing with image depth when the entire industry still assumed a single lens was enough. By 2013, the LG G2 introduced the double tap to wake feature, also known as knock knock. A simple gesture, yet it changed the habits of millions of users. Later, it became an almost default standard across Android. The LG G3 continued the technological showcase with the first mass-produced QHD display. While many were still debating whether full HD was enough, LG pushed the resolution even higher. Then came the LG G5 with its ultrawide camera, a lens choice that was initially seen as secondary but later became an industry standard. Today, almost every flagship includes an ultrawide. When you take a group photo without having to step back, you're using an idea that LG helped popularize early on. The LG G6 brought the 18:9 display ratio to the mass market, stretching vertical screen real estate while most devices were still holding on to the old aspect ratio. That design later became the standard for modern smartphones. The LG V40 followed with 3 focal lengths, ultra-wide, standard, and telephoto, in a single device. When users today seamlessly switch between shooting angles, they are benefiting from an experiment LG once dared to make. But on the other hand, the LG V10 and V20 with their secondary top display sounded clever, yet quickly vanished like an idea that never had time to mature. The G Flex, with its self-healing back and curved design, sparked initial curiosity, then sank due to a lack of practical use. The LG G5 ambitiously tried to turn the smartphone into a modular ecosystem, where you could attach a camera module or a DAC. A bold concept, but just 1 year later, the modules were abandoned. Early buyers became the ones left stuck with it. The LG G8 continued with its Hand ID vein sensor and touchless gesture controls. On stage, it looked like technology from the future. In real life, it worked inconsistently and often caused frustration. When the headline feature isn't reliable, the entire product comes into question. And when that pattern repeats multiple times, it's no longer an accident. It becomes a pattern. The biggest consequence wasn't a single failed product, but the market's psychology. Users began to feel uneasy. They didn't know whether today's feature would still be supported next year. They didn't know whether the software would be updated on time, especially given LG's already poor update history. Each strategic shift felt like resetting trust, and trust is not something that can be easily reset. There's a theory that sounds convincing. LG didn't die because of its products, but because of the media. Because reviewers were too harsh, because tech YouTubers didn't support them enough. But if you look at the data, that argument starts to crack. Major reviewers like Marques Brownlee made dozens of videos about LG phones over the years. The G Flex even helped produce one of the first viral videos on his channel. The LG Wing later appeared in a clip that racked up tens of millions of views on TikTok. Exposure was not lacking. LG was not suffocated by silence. The issue lies in a subtle but crucial difference. Praising innovation is not the same as recommending a purchase. A reviewer might say, "This idea is very interesting," but when it comes to the conclusion, the only question that matters is, should you spend your money on it? And at that point, LG often stumbled. A typical case study is the LG G8. The overall hardware was solid, the display was beautiful, performance was fine, but the killer feature was vein WD and gesture controls, features that worked inconsistently in daily use. When the most distinctive feature isn't reliable, the product becomes an ordinary device with a few odd details. A comment like "jack of all trades and master of none" may sound harsh, but it accurately reflected the real-world experience. The market operates under a cold rule. Creative, unique, and unproven devices usually appeal only to a small group of tech enthusiasts. This group is loud online, but not large enough to sustain long-term profits. Positive reviews about an idea do not automatically translate into sustainable sales. YouTubers didn't kill LG. They simply shined a light on weaknesses that were already there. And when the light is strong enough, the market delivers its own verdict. And behind every debate about innovation, marketing, or reviews, there is an even colder reality: the balance sheet. For many consecutive years, LG's smartphone division lost billions of dollars. Not a bad quarter, not an unlucky year, but a prolonged streak of losses. And at the corporate level, emotion cannot save a money-burning business unit. Look at how the competitors operate. Samsung has mass-market models that sell in enormous volumes, generating steady cash flow to offset risky projects like foldable displays. Xiaomi offers competitively priced devices with thin margins but massive volume, funding experimental lines like the Mix. LG didn't have that foundation. Their main product line was the very place carrying those bold experiments. When an idea failed, there wasn't a thick enough financial cushion to absorb the shock. The risk wasn't distributed. It was concentrated at the core. In the end, the decision to exit the smartphone market wasn't an emotional surrender, but a business calculation. LG announced it would shut down the loss-making division to focus resources on growth areas such as electric vehicle components, smart homes, robotics, and artificial intelligence. In corporate logic, that was a rational move. And sometimes a company doesn't die because it lacks ideas. It leaves because there is no longer a financial reason to stay. LG's story is not a story of stupidity. It is a story of imbalance. Innovation is a rare trait in the tech industry, where most companies choose the safe path and repeat proven formulas. LG was different. They experimented, they took risks, they dared to introduce ideas others hesitated to attempt. But innovation, if not anchored by stability and consistency, becomes a burden. The smartphone market does not reward the one who experiments the most. It rewards the one who builds long-term trust. Consumers need to feel that the device they buy today will still be supported tomorrow, that the ecosystem won't disappear after a single product cycle. LG failed to create that sense of security, and when trust erodes, every innovation becomes riskier. LG's withdrawal was a loss for the market. Fewer competitors mean less pressure to innovate. A player willing to experiment left the board, leaving behind a void that not many are ready to fill with the same level of boldness. LG did not die in mediocrity. They didn't turn themselves into a copy of someone else just to survive a few more years. They chose to leave when their ideas were no longer rewarded fairly by the market. LG has left the game, but the question still remains: how many other brands are walking the same path? Innovative, bold, then quietly disappearing because of decisions made behind boardroom doors. If you believe this market is becoming less competitive, less daring, stay here, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave your perspective below. Did LG die because it innovated too much, or because it wasn't cold enough in business? See you next time.